The balloons shimmered above, but one pop cracked the room as he unfolded the fabric, a uniform stitched with lies. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Walter, I'm 67 years old, and this is what really happened. The party was already too much. I had told my daughter Julie to keep it simple, just close family, a quiet dinner maybe, but somehow it turned into 30 people crammed into my backyard in Huntsville, Alabama. There were folding chairs borrowed from the church down the road, set up in uneven rows across the patchy grass. A rented tent stood crooked on its poles, one side sagging just enough to make me nervous every time the breeze kicked up. A Bluetooth speaker rattled against the drink cooler, coughing out a never-ending playlist of 70s hits. Fleetwood Mac, Elton John, the Eagles, each one sounding like it had been pulled from some warped cassette. The kind of thing that was supposed to be nostalgic. I didn't complain. You learn not to at my age. You smile, nod, thank everyone for showing up. Especially when you know some of them drove from Birmingham or Nashville just to stand in your yard with paper plates and red plastic cups. But I wasn't expecting him. My son, Matthew. He hadn't been to my house in 3 years. Not since the hospital bills incident. Not since the shouting match that rattled my windows and ended with my front door slamming so hard the wreath fell off the hook. Not since I quietly rewrote my will the week after, sliding the manila folder into my desk drawer like a secret I never wanted opened. Still, when he walked in, jeans clean, hair slicked back like he'd run a wet comb through it in the car, that same movie star grin of his, I didn't say a word. Julie, bless her, moved quickly. She pressed a plate into his hands before the tension could thicken, her smile tight as fishing line. People shifted, making space. That's the thing about charisma. It doesn't always come with character, but it clears a path for you like Moses parting the Red Sea. I raised my glass, out of habit, out of politeness, and nodded toward him. He didn't nod back. That should have told me something. We cut the cake around 7. Chocolate with white frosting, gold candles spelling out, Happy 67th, Dad. The kind of lettering that looks celebratory until you notice the sugar clumps crusting at the edges. My grandson Connor held the lighter. Eager hands, shaky little flame. I let him. The fire trembled in the wind but clung stubbornly to each wick like it had something to prove. Speech, Dad, Julie clapped, bright and insistent. Others joined in, the rhythm uneven, some claps loud, some lazy, the kind of applause that's half genuine, half obligation. I stepped forward, cleared my throat. Well, P.O.P. One balloon burst near the table leg, sharp enough to slice the air. Everyone jumped. Even the dog barked, claws skittering against the patio concrete. And right then, right in the hush that followed, the cloth rustled. Loud, deliberate. Not the kind of shuffle you ignore, the kind that turns heads. Like a magician about to reveal his trick. Matthew stepped into the center of the patio. His shoulders squared, chin lifted just enough to dare anyone to interrupt. He held something in both hands. Something folded, navy blue, heavy in the way fabric shouldn't be. Then, with a quick jerk, he unfurled it. A military dress uniform. Dark wool, brass buttons that caught the candlelight, insignia stitched proud across the chest. But it was off. The color, wrong. A shade too bright, too theatrical. The patches, stacked like a child's drawing. Too many. And the rank? Higher than anything I'd ever earned. Next to medals I'd never worn. A ripple passed through the crowd, laughter in fragments. Not the full sound of humor, but the shallow release of confusion. What's this? Someone muttered, low. Julie's face drained of color. My brother Glenn leaned forward in his lawn chair, squinting hard. He'd served. He would know what was real and what was stitched together for show. Matthew raised the coat like a trophy. His grin spread wide, but his eyes were all knife. This, he announced, voice pitched high enough for the whole yard, is what Dad wanted you all to believe he wore. A few uneasy chuckles scattered in the corners, the kind people give when they aren't sure if something's a joke or a jab. And then he threw it. Right onto the table. Silverware clattered like startled birds. A fork hit the grass. The tablecloth bunched. Wax from the birthday candles dripped in trembling lines, catching in the folds. He always said he was in Army intelligence, Matthew went on, pacing the patio like he owned the stage. Told us all stories. Operation this, base that. Even had some photo of a helicopter in his garage. Remember that, Dad? My jaw clenched. My hands tightened behind my back until the knuckles pressed white. I hadn't touched that photo in years. I hadn't looked at it. But he remembered. He remembered too well. "Well," he said, grinning sharp now, "turns out it's easy to order a uniform online. Real easy. Sew on a few patches, tell a few stories." He turned deliberately to the guests, to my friends, to my family. "You ever notice Dad never had any official papers? No discharge records? No medals on display? Not even a dog tag, just stories." Murmurs now, low and sticky, like flies buzzing around a trash bin in July. Someone whispered, "Is that true?" The candles bent lower, the wax stretched thin, bleeding across white frosting. Two cousins clapped, awkwardly, a mercy gesture, a bandage over silence. Darren even let out a laugh. Of course he did. Darren, the spineless one, always eager to side with whoever shouted loudest. I didn't move. Julie tried to speak, but Matthew cut her down with a wave, sharp as a blade. "Let him speak, sis. He's had 67 years to prepare this act. I'm just giving the family the real finale." He stepped back, arms folded tight, chin raised in challenge. And the eyes, they all turned. Every single one. Even the kids. Even the dog quieted, head cocked toward me like it knew the tension had shifted. I looked at the uniform, at the cheap stitching, at the wrong cut of the shoulders, at the missing weight of authenticity, a costume pretending to be honor. The wind stirred. The cloth shivered, brushing the edge of the table like it didn't belong in daylight. He wanted me to snap, to shout, to let the anger boil out and confirm every suspicion he'd planted in their heads. But I've been through worse storms. I looked down at the cake. The candlelight danced across the icing, soft and stubborn. And I spoke, quiet, steady. "Thank you all for coming. I'm honored to have you here." Then I sat. That was all. No defense, no raised voice, no attempt at explanation. Because the deeper the lie, the more it rots in the air when left untouched. Let him talk, let them whisper. The truth would walk in soon enough, and when it did, it wouldn't be wearing polyester. The candles burned low, wax dripping in slow streams. The applause felt hollow, echoing under the chandelier as the fake badge glinted. It's funny how fast respect can drain out of a room. Not all at once, not like a switch flipped. It leaks. It seeps out of the air, invisible at first, then suddenly heavy. It starts with the way eyes stop meeting yours, the way people look almost at you but not quite, how they look through you, or over your shoulder, as though the floorboards just became more interesting than your face. The way voices turn hushed, tilted, cautious, like the air itself might be listening, storing words for later judgment. Doubt doesn't shout. It whispers. And in that moment, they weren't whispering about Matthew. They were whispering about me. Julie stood frozen. Her hand gripped the back of a chair so tightly her knuckles blanched. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, but no sound came. Her husband leaned in, steadying her with a palm to her arm, quiet pressure saying more than words could. My brother Glenn finally stood, his body stiff, his frame still broad even with age. He didn't speak. He only stared at the coat sprawled across the table, a uniform that should have carried dignity but lay there like a corpse on display. His jaw twitched once, barely visible, but I caught it. Then he sat back down heavily, the chair groaning beneath his weight. The music tried to keep the night alive. The Bluetooth speaker near the fence warbled a Fleetwood Mac track, tinny and misplaced. That upbeat rhythm, meant to lift the air, clashed against the silence that hung over the patio. It felt wrong, like a wedding song played at a funeral. Connor tugged on Julie's skirt, small hand, eyes wide, with the unfiltered honesty of children. "Why did Uncle Matt do that?" Julie blinked down at him, once, twice. Her throat worked before she managed, soft, "Go play, baby." But there was no play left in them. The children had stopped mid-game, half-empty juice pouches dangling at their sides. They just stood, eyes darting from me, to the table, to Matthew. Absorbing, learning in real time what betrayal looks like. And then, there it was, Jared, one of Matthew's friends. Tall, lanky, always hiding under a baseball cap even indoors. His grin split wide, teeth flashing in the dim light. A grin that didn't belong. Not joy, not humor. The grin of a man who came for blood and was getting his show. He leaned close to another man, muttering just loud enough that I heard. Didn't think he'd actually do it. Didn't think he'd actually do it. That sentence dropped into my ear like an iron key sliding into a lock. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a flare of anger. It was planned, a setup, a spectacle they'd been waiting for. Matthew paced again, slow, deliberate. His shoes tapped against the patio stones with the rhythm of a courtroom attorney. "You see," he said, drawing the words out, lifting a cup from the drink table like he had all the time in the world, "I've done my homework." He took a sip, let it hang there. I looked for records, called around, even filed a request with the National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis. He waited, let the anticipation swell. No file for Walter D. Evans, no military discharge, no record of enlistment. And then he let the silence do the rest. It worked. The crowd shifted. Voices rose again, no longer whispers, but conversations just loud enough to sting. Amelia, my cousin, leaned into her husband's ear. "You don't think he really faked all that, do you, all these years?" Beside her, Glenn's wife murmured, "Why wouldn't he ever show photos or a certificate?" Their words slithered across the patio, reaching me even as they pretended to hide them. I looked up once and caught Connor's eyes, my grandson. His gaze wasn't playful now. It was questioning, searching my face for an answer I wasn't ready to give, and in that look, I saw it, the seed of doubt, the small crack in the foundation. I stayed seated. I let the fire burn. Because sometimes the flames have to get hot before people start to see what's real. Matthew gestured toward me, sharp and mocking. "See? Nothing. Just sits there." A laugh broke out, low, mean, from the cluster near the folding chairs. Julie finally snapped forward, her voice sharp enough to slice the tension. "That's enough." Heads turned toward her. "You made your point, Matt. Sit down." But Matthew only smiled, wolfish. "Oh, I'm just getting started." He turned back to the crowd, feeding off their eyes. "It's not just about Dad pretending to be some war hero. It's about how long he's fooled all of you. Every story, every barbecue. Every time he said he served, he was lying. He built this entire persona on a lie." Then he locked his gaze on me. "Tell them, Dad. Tell them the truth." I looked up. Candlelight danced in his eyes, bright, hungry. He thought he had me pinned. And then the chair creaked. Not mine. Someone else stood. I turned, slowly, and there he was, a man I hadn't seen in 20 years. Broad shoulders filled the doorway. Silver stubble framed his jaw, a khaki shirt tucked neat into worn jeans, boots scuffed from real work, not costume. Dan Price, retired first sergeant, my brother in arms from '82 and '83. The years dropped away. In an instant I was back in Panama. Heat, mud, gunfire. And Dan, always steady, always near. He didn't rush. He didn't grandstand. He just walked forward, one step at a time. Matthew's smile cracked, faltering for the first time. "What? Who the hell are you?" Dan stopped in front of the table. His eyes swept the fake uniform, then Matthew, then me. And then he saluted. Crisp, clean, practiced. The kind of salute you don't fake. His voice followed, calm even. "Sergeant Evans, it's been a long time." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Matthew barked out a laugh, shrill, desperate. "Oh, come on, what is this? Somebody you hired to play along?" Dan lowered his hand. His tone hardened. "I served with your father in Panama. 2 tours. He took a bullet in the thigh, pulling a radio operator out of a ravine. We still don't know how he walked after that. But he did." The words landed like hammer blows. Dan stepped closer to the uniform. His hand pinched the sleeve between 2 fingers like it was contaminated. "To wear this," he said, voice deep, deliberate, "and to mock that service is disgraceful." He let go. The fabric dropped back to the table with a flat thud. The music stopped completely. Someone must have killed the speaker. The silence that followed was thick. Matthew opened his mouth, closed it, no words. Dan wasn't finished. He turned to the crowd. His eyes scanned them all. "You want proof?" From his back pocket he pulled a folded piece of paper, edges yellowed, creases worn from time. The weight of years visible in its folds. He unfolded it, raised it high. D Form 214. Official discharge paperwork. Walter Evans. Honorable. Decorated. Intelligence Division. He stepped to Glenn, handed it to him. Gave me a copy years ago, in case anything ever happened to him. Glenn read silently, lips moving, his eyes widened. Then he passed it to Amelia. The paper traveled. Each hand that touched it left another silence behind. Matthew stood frozen, stone still. And then, Dan dropped the twist he hadn't seen coming. You filed a Freedom of Information request? Dan asked, voice almost casual. Nice try, but you forgot something. He took a step closer. Your father served in classified operations. His records are sealed. Need Pentagon clearance to even see them. Matthew's lips moved. No words, only air. Dan looked him over, slow and measured. You used a fake uniform. Wrong insignia, wrong division, wrong years. You didn't even get the name tag right. And then, the strike. You didn't shame him tonight, you exposed yourself. I stood, slowly, deliberately. The fake coat still lay there. I picked it up, felt the cheapness in my fingers, the wrong weight, the lack of history. You wanted to make a statement, Matt. I turned, dropped it into the trash can beside the patio. The hollow thud echoed like a gavel. Well, I said quietly, you did. My glass tapped against the table once. Then nothing, not the music, not the chatter, only silence as he grinned at me. I didn't need to say much after that. The silence itself was louder than any speech. It sat heavy over the patio, pressing down on the tent fabric, slipping between the slats of the deck, hanging in the warm night air like smoke that wouldn't lift. Dan stood next to me, arms folded across his chest, the kind of stance that didn't need words. His presence said enough. Solid, unshakable. Julie moved slowly toward the trash can. Her hand trembled slightly, though her face was set hard. She bent, lifted the coat with the edge of a paper plate, and shoved it down deeper. The plastic crinkled. The fabric slumped further into the dark of the bin, where it belonged. Matthew hadn't moved. His confidence, once so sharp, had curdled like milk in the heat. The smirk that had carried him through the first act of this little performance was gone. His jaw clenched tight, the corners of his mouth twitching, with the effort to hold on to something that was already slipping away. His hands flexed at his sides, fists clenching and releasing like he was trying to grip a version of this night that no longer existed. A throat cleared. Glenn. My brother's voice carried across the patio, rough but steady. For the record, he said, holding the paper high, that form is legit. You don't fake this paper. The font, the seal, the serial, it's all right. And Walter, his eyes cut toward me, steady. He never paraded it around. That's how you know it's real. Julie's. Husband Mark leaned forward in his chair. He never bragged, he said quietly. Never even told us the full stories. Now I know why. A ripple of nods followed. Yet still, some of the guests lingered in the fog of uncertainty. Their eyes shifted between Matthew and me, between the trash can and the table. They needed more. Fine. I stepped back toward the house. The porch light glared against the glass as I pushed the door open. The hinge groaned with a long creak. I didn't rush. Let every movement land slow, deliberate. Inside, the air was cooler, quieter. Shadows stretched long across the hallway walls. I opened the closet, its dark mouth yawning, and reached past coats that hadn't been worn in years. My hand brushed the cardboard edge of an old Sears shoebox, the one crammed with Connor's kindergarten art, still smudged with finger paint blues and greens. And behind that, what I had been saving. A manila envelope, thick, heavy, familiar. I carried it back outside. The crowd shifted as I stepped through the door again. All eyes locked on me. I set the envelope on the table with a solid thud, next to the sagging cake and the last of the flickering candles. A few guests flinched at the sound. I pulled the flap open, slid the contents out one by one. First, laminated service evaluations, pages stamped with signatures, typed reports, words like commendable and exemplary. Next, letters from commanding officers, creased, yellowed, typed on military letterhead, written in a language of respect that didn't need embellishment. Then, a photograph, me and Dan, arms thrown over each other's shoulders, Boots caked in jungle mud. Faces younger, thinner, but marked by exhaustion and something deeper. July 1983 scrawled in fading ink on the back. And finally, 3 medals. I placed them carefully on the table, one at a time. Bronze Star, Army Commendation Medal. Purple Heart, Medal Catching Candlelight, proof heavier than words. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. One by one, people drifted forward. Their hands hovered before daring to touch. Fingers brushed the smooth lamination, the cool metal. Whispers rose in small bursts. Gasps escaped like steam from a kettle. Julie pressed her hands over her mouth. Her shoulders shook with relief, or guilt, or maybe both. "Oh my God, Dad," she whispered, voice breaking. Connor edged closer, small chest rising and falling quick. His eyes shone wide and unblinking. "You really did all this?" he asked, voice full of wonder. I looked down at him, my grandson. "I did my job," I said. Dan rested his hand gently on Connor's shoulder. His voice was steady, almost reverent. "That's what men like your grandfather do. No parades, just duty." Matthew staggered back a step, his face pale, lips dry. The boy who had swaggered in with a grin now looked hollow, brittle. Where was all that stuff before?" he croaked, pointing with a trembling hand. "Safe," I said simply. His voice cracked. "You could have shown it, proved it before I ever said a word." I stepped toward him, each word measured. "Son, I don't live my life trying to prove myself to people willing to believe the worst." His jaw quivered, his eyes darted, searching for someone, anyone, to back him up. "So what now?" his voice broke. "You all just act like nothing happened?" And here it came. The twist he never saw coming. "No," I said, my voice cut clean. "Something will happen." I reached back into the envelope, drew out a smaller document, heavier stock. Embossed seal pressed deep into the paper. Julie caught sight of it, her eyes widened, lips parting. "You're not." "I am," I said. I held it up, let the candlelight catch the seal. "This," I said, "is an affidavit, signed and notarized 2 years ago in Madison County. It officially removes Matthew Evans from any claim on my estate. Property, savings, benefits, everything." The words fell hard. A hush spread like frost across the patio. This time the silence landed on him. I laid the document on the table, flat, firm, like a verdict rendered in open court. "You forged a uniform, tried to assassinate my character, turned my birthday into a trial." I paused. "So now, consider this your sentencing." His face twisted, warped by fury and humiliation. "You think I care about your estate?" he spat. I shrugged. "Doesn't matter. You cared enough to try and humiliate me in front of 30 people. Dan's voice rumbled from beside me. "And now you've got 30 witnesses who saw it all." Matthew spun, shoulders tight, and stormed toward the gate. Before he reached it, Julie's voice cut across the yard, strong, unflinching. "You don't come back here, Matt. Not again." He froze, turned slightly. She didn't blink. Her voice didn't waver. "You tried to ruin the only good man left in this family. That uniform? That was never his lie. It was yours." The gate rattled, slammed hard behind him. A balloon bobbed loose, its ribbon brushing against the grass in the night wind. I turned back to the table. My eyes fell on Connor, still rooted beside me. "Hey," I said softly. He looked up. "Yeah, Grandpa?" I smiled faintly, gently. "Blow out those candles. I think the party's over." He nodded, small, solemn. He stepped forward, drew in a breath. One steady exhale. The flames bent, shimmered, died. The smoke curled upward in thin gray ribbons. The night held still. And silence, this time, felt like peace. Chair scrape, boots on floor, salute echo. The following morning was even quieter than the night had been. The kind of quiet that doesn't hum with peace, but presses on the chest like weight. Julie had stayed after the last of the guests left, moving through the yard with a trash bag in one hand, her face caught somewhere between duty and heartbreak. She stacked plates, scooped up half-empty cups, scraped cake off paper plates with a sigh that sounded like years spilling out at once. She tried to talk, here and there, small bursts of words. But it wasn't talk to solve anything, just air to fill the space. I already knew what she wanted to say. I already knew she was hurting. not just from what Matthew had done in front of everyone, but from what his actions confirmed. That the brother she remembered, the boy she grew up protecting, might only live in her memory now. By sunrise, she was gone. The house was mine again. Light crept through the blinds, thin and silver. The floorboards held a faint smell of spilled beer. My kitchen smelled of coffee, the old Mr. Coffee pot burbling with the same rhythm it had kept for 20 years. Black. No cream. I poured it into the chipped Huntsville high mug I always used. The handle had a crack, but never gave out. It was the kind of morning that might have felt peaceful in another life. But peace wasn't in the room. Because there's a kind of silence you earn, after work well done, after promises kept. And then there's the other kind, the silence that demands closure. At 8:17 a.m., the doorbell rang. I didn't startle, I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, there she stood, a woman in her early 30s, neat gray suit, black bag at her side. Straight posture, eyes direct. A manila envelope tucked beneath her arm. She introduced herself, Amber, with the Madison County Clerk's office. Her tone practiced, polite, the cadence of someone who delivered bad and good news both. "Are you Walter Evans?" "Yes, ma'am." She offered me a clipboard, pen clipped to the top. "I just need your signature to confirm delivery." The amendment has already been filed with the county, but this completes the legal notification step. You'll receive a certified copy in 7 to 10 business days. I signed where she pointed. The pen scraped, my hand stayed steady. She passed me the packet, a weight you could feel before even opening it. Inside, the finalized trust amendment, stamped, sealed, official in every way that mattered. At the top, in black letters, revocation of beneficiary rights, Matthew L. Evans. Filed under civil claim number 3829 McAL. Effective immediately. No challenge, no delay. Final. By noon, the sun over Huntsville beat sharp and clear, warming the patio like it was scrubbing the night away. But the ghosts of last evening still sat in the chairs, in the folds of the tablecloth, in the way the wind moved through the empty tent. The table remained, plates stacked from the cleanup, the frosting stains on the wood. The fake uniform was gone. Julie had driven it home, tossed it straight into her fire pit, and sent me a photo an hour later. Black ash and brass buttons curled in cinders. Proof erased. But the damage it tried to do still hung in the air. You can burn cloth, but not what people felt when they saw it. So I made a call. Dan picked up on the second ring. His voice was gravel, steady as always. "You ready?" "I am." We met at the American Legion post just off Meridian Street. I hadn't been in years, though I used to go Thursday nights for coffee socials. Men and women gathering, telling stories too heavy for their families. Dan had kept going, kept his hands on the honor board they maintained. Today wasn't social. Today was business. He led me down the narrow hallway into the back office. The air smelled faintly of polish and old paper. The walls lined with frames, photographs, commendations, flags folded into triangles. A young man sat behind the desk, maybe 25. Crew cut so sharp it could cut glass. The Marine posture never really leaves. His name tag read Stephen. "You're the one from last night," he said. His tone wasn't skeptical. It was steady, respectful. "Dan told me what happened." I nodded. No need to add more. "You want this added to the public board?" he asked, gesturing toward the wall. I turned and looked. Rows of framed records, brass plates etched with names, photographs, some black and white, some fading color, lives hung in neat order, legacies kept alive. "I do," I said. I handed him the envelope. He opened it carefully. Inside, my certified record, medal notations, deployment dates, the black and white photo of me with my unit in Panama, boots, sunk in mud, eyes tired but steady, and a copy of the affidavit, sealed, notarized, that removed Matthew from my estate. Stephen paused when he reached that one. "You sure about including this?" "Positive," I said. He let out a low whistle. Never seen anyone add something like this before. Dan leaned closer, his arms folded. "It's a message." I met Dan's eyes. "To anyone watching," I said, "you don't get to rewrite my legacy." Dan's jaw flexed. He nodded once. "Damn right." Stephen slid the papers into a folder. "We'll have it mounted by Friday." "Thank you," I said. I turned to leave, but Stephen called out. "Sir?" I stopped in the doorway. "For what it's worth," he said, "my dad used to talk about guys like you. The quiet ones, the ones who never bragged, just did the work." I felt the words settle, not flattery, recognition. I gave a small smile. "Tell your dad thanks." Then I walked out. That evening, I sat on the porch. The air was cooling, the light draining from the sky. I lit a single candle and set it in front of me. Not for a birthday. That chapter had closed. This flame was for clarity. The wax pulled slow, the wick bent in the wind. Matthew never called. No apology, no attempt to explain. No, I went too far. Just silence. Julie texted one line later that night. "He's not contesting it." I replied with one word, "Good." And that was that. I held a photo in my hands. Connor had given it to me that afternoon, printed from his mother's phone. In it, he stood in front of the honor wall at the Legion, pointing to my name. His smile stretched wide, a beam of light against brass and history. On the back, in his messy handwriting, he'd written, "One day, I'll wear a real uniform too, just like you, Grandpa." I didn't cry. Not then. But I folded the photo carefully, slid it into the same folder where I kept the rest. Because legacies aren't built in noise, not in shouting, not in accusations. They're built in truth, in service, and in silence, honored, not broken. Birthday candles extinguished, paper signed, silence deep. The final thing I did was walk into the county recorder's office, downtown Huntsville. A beige brick building with narrow windows and the same sun-faded awning I remembered from decades earlier. The lobby smelled faintly of dust, paper, and the lemon cleaner they used on the linoleum floors. Third floor, records and probate division. Same hallway where I had once stood in line, sweaty-palmed, to file for Julie's birth certificate back in '86. She'd been swaddled in pink then, barely bigger than the paperwork I carried. Now, almost 40 years later, I was back. Not for beginnings, for endings, and something more permanent. I carried the folder with me. Not the medals, not the pictures, just the trust amendment, and the legacy assignment form. The documents that would speak after me, louder than any uniform or rumor ever could. The woman behind the glass counter wore a lavender perfume that drifted through the slot as she moved. She had kind eyes, deliberate movements, and a name tag pinned neatly to her blouse. It read, "Charisse." She looked up. "May I help you, sir?" "Yes," I said. "I need to file a deed transfer." She took the papers, handling them with a speed that was practiced but not careless. Her eyes flicked over each line, her finger tracing signatures, seals, notary stamps. "Revocation of beneficiary rights and property reassignment," she said, her voice neutral, efficient. "Do you have the supporting documents notarized?" "Yes, ma'am," I answered, sliding the second folder through the slot. She nodded once, pointed to a highlighted section. "Initial here and here." I signed. The pen scratched against the paper, echoing faintly in the stillness of the office. That was it. Less than 6 minutes. 32 years of house payments, years of savings, the truck in the driveway, all of it redirected with the stroke of a pen. Legally, permanently, irrevocably. Filed under Instrument Number 7529 LPHSVAL. Stamped, accepted, final. I didn't do it to punish Matthew anymore. That punishment had already been delivered the night he walked out of my yard. This was about something else. About legacy. About putting the weight where it belonged. Julie came by that evening. She carried a foil-covered pan in one hand and Connor's backpack in the other. Dinner was simple. Costco rotisserie chicken, cornbread still warm from the oven, a jug of sweet tea sweating on the counter, Southern comfort served on paper plates. We ate on the patio, the night soft around us, no candles this time. Just the fading light of the sun, the gentle hum of cicadas, and the smell of fresh-cut grass drifting in from the neighbor's yard. Connor, curious as ever, pushed his plate aside after a few bites. "Were you scared in the war, Grandpa?" he asked, voice careful. I chewed, swallowed. "Sometimes." He leaned closer. Did you shoot anyone?" I looked at Julie. The question hung between us like smoke. She gave me a small nod. "He can handle it." I met Connor's eyes. He deserved honesty. "Yes," I said. He leaned back, silent, processing. His brow furrowed, mouth twisting like he was working out an equation too big for his age. Then he asked, "Did they deserve it?" The air stilled. I stared at him for a long moment. "War isn't about deserve," I said finally. "It's about orders and consequences." Julie reached over and slid her hand into mine. Her grip was warm, grounding. "You were never a storyteller, Dad," she said softly. "But I'm proud of the story you lived." I smiled faintly. "There's one last thing." I stood, went inside, and returned with an envelope. I placed it in front of her on the table. She frowned. "What is this?" "Title transfer. Keys. The house. It's yours now." Her eyes widened. "Dad." "It's time," I said. Her throat worked. "I don't want this because of what happened with Matt." "You're not getting it because of him," I told her. My voice stayed even. "You're getting it because of you." She looked down, blinking hard. "I don't know what to say." I sipped my tea, the ice clicking against the glass. "Then don't say anything," I said. "Just live in it. Make memories. Raise him right." I pointed my chin toward Connor. "And when he's ready, tell him the truth. All of it. The good, the bad." Julie's eyes were glassy now. She nodded. "I will. Matthew never tried to reach me again. I heard through Glenn that he'd moved to Atlanta. Took a sales job. A cubicle somewhere, a tie knotted tight around his throat every morning. He never mentioned the party. Never told his side. That kind of shame doesn't echo. It buries itself. Quiet. Permanent. And I didn't chase him down. Some wounds aren't mine to stitch. But a week later, I did receive a letter. Plain white envelope. No return address. Typed. Short. "I thought I could tear down the version of you people loved. All I did was prove I was the smaller man. You won't hear from me again. I know I don't deserve to. M." I read it once, then carried it to the fire pit. The match caught. The paper curled, edges blackening, letters twisting into smoke. The flames ate fast, until there was nothing but ash and a faint wisp rising into the night. Some apologies are too late. Others aren't worth keeping. That weekend, the community center held its annual Veterans Recognition Breakfast. Folding chairs lined the hall. Flags stood in the corners. The smell of eggs, bacon, and instant coffee filled the air. I was called up front. The mayor handed me a certificate, shook my hand firmly, and directed me to a seat at the head table. Connor stood beside me the whole time, chin lifted, chest puffed with pride. When the crowd clapped, his small hands clapped loudest. After the ceremony, he tugged at my sleeve. "Grandpa?" "Yeah?" "I told my teacher what happened." "Oh yeah?" I asked. "She said you're a real hero." I looked at him. "No," I said softly. "I'm just a man who told the truth, even when it hurt." He nodded. Thought about that. Then he slipped his hand into mine. We walked out together. Into the morning light. Into silence that finally felt clean. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments.